السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا قيوما، نؤمن له بالربوبية ونقر له بالعبودية، من يهد الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله، أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل ولزوم أمره. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: وجعلناهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا وأوحينا إليهم فعل الخيرات وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وكانوا لنا عابدين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. One of the main objectives of our Islamic teachings is to not only nurture our personal relationship with God, but also additionally to model for us outstanding and efficient relations with people, with one another. And during these days of Safar, as we commemorate the life and legacy and the martyrdom of our second Imam, Imam Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, I want to take this opportunity to share with you all some wisdom from the Imam alayhi salam, especially as it relates to social relations and interactions. And I want to here focus on 5 points. The first of these points is that one's relationship to God should form or should inform one's relationship to people. The basis for how we deal and interact with others, our relationship with others, should be informed by our relationship to and commitment to God. Imam Hasan alayhi salam, he says, من طلب رضا الله بسخط الناس كفاه الله أمور الناس ومن طلب رضا الناس بسخط الله وكله الله إلى الناس. He says in the tradition that the one who seeks the pleasure and the satisfaction of God, irrespective of how other people feel about it. His objective is to seek the pleasure and the satisfaction of God in what he does, in what he says, in how he deals with people around him. If the objective is to seek the pleasure and satisfaction of God, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He suffices. He takes care of one's relationship with people, whether they agree or disagree. God takes care of that. However, وَمَنْ طَلَبَ رِضَى النَّاسِ بِسَخَطِ اللَّهِ, the one, on the other hand, who seeks the pleasure of people, the satisfaction of people at the expense of the pleasure of God, at the displeasure of God, then God leaves, abandons the people, that person, to the people. They're abandoned, right? Here, the Imam is teaching us that God's pleasure has to be our ultimate objective. Our ultimate objective. That we should never compromise this relationship, the pleasure and the satisfaction of God. We should never compromise this for the sake of people pleasing. Oftentimes we find ourselves in situations where we want to please individuals around us. And sometimes what ends up happening is that we compromise the pleasure and the satisfaction of God for the sake of people, to please them. I may compromise the value and the significance of observing hijab or my prayers so I can please my spouse. My spouse doesn't like this, and so I want to make my spouse happy, and as a result, I compromise when it comes to my prayers or my hijab or something else. I want to please my boss, so I compromise when it comes to honesty and integrity. I want to make my boss happy, right? I want to please my friends and my associates, so I compromise when it comes to certain values, right? Important values. We should never compromise, especially when it comes at the expense of the pleasure and the satisfaction of God. Because people will always expect us to please them. People will always expect us to do that which pleases them, that which makes them comfortable, right? But this in itself, pleasing everyone around us, is something that is unachievable. There's a famous saying in Arabic that says, رضا الناس غاية لا تدرك. The pleasure and the satisfaction of people is an unachievable objective. You want to make everyone happy. The prophets and the messengers couldn't make everyone happy, right? It's an objective that is unachievable. And then the statement says, وَرِضَ اللَّهِ غَايَةٌ لَا تُتْرَكْ. But the pleasure and satisfaction of God is an objective that should never be abandoned. Should never be abandoned. That needs to be our ultimate objective. So number one, this first principle, according to the teachings of Imam Al-Hasan, is that our relationship with God should inform our relationship and our interactions with people around us. This is number one. Number two, the Imam teaches us to live by what is often referred to as the golden rule. He says, صاحب الناس مثل ما تحب أن يصاحبوك به. Associate and live with people in the same manner that you hope and desire for people to live and associate with you. It's the golden rule. Treat others how you wish to be treated, right? Do I want and expect respect from people? I want people to respect me. I should respect people. If I want people to be generous and kind with me, I should be generous and kind with others. If I want people to give me the benefit of the doubt, not to rush to judge me and to think negatively of me, I should give people the benefit of the doubt. It's a very simple rule, but one that is profound. Live and interact with others in a way that you want them to live and interact with you. And we all want honor, we all want dignity, we all want peace, we all want kindness, we all want compassion. This is how we want people to deal with us. So we need to be able to deal with people in a manner that we wish for ourselves. However, we find that our teachings, in addition to the simple golden rule, our teachings often add another element. They tell us not only to deal with people sort of, if you act with me in this way, I act with you in that way. You respect me, I respect you. It's good, but to go beyond this. And that is that element of clemency, forgiveness, pardon, kindness, compassion. What is known as Al-Hilm. Al-Hilm is that sense of clemency that we have. When our heart is big, it's expansive. We pardon, we forgive, we overlook, right? That sense of clemency and tolerance and leniency. Al-Imam Al-Hasan was asked one day, what is clemency? What is Al-Hilm? And he responded with the following. He said, Hilm is كظم الغيظ وملك النفس. It is defined as suppressing one's anger, كظم الغيظ, وملك النفس, and to control oneself. We're not expected not to get angry. We're human beings. We're human beings. People say things, they do things that make us upset, they make us angry. This is a natural human reaction. It's a natural human emotion. So we're not expected not to get angry. But we are encouraged to do what? To suppress that anger. To control that anger. And here we find in the life and the legacy of Al-Imam Al-Hasan a great lesson, where he embodies clemency, where he embodies this pardoning, this sense of pardoning and forgiveness. One of the titles of Imam al-Hasan, he is known as Halimu Ahlul Bayt. Among the Ahlul Bayt, he is known as the one who was often clement. He displayed clemency. And there are many reports of how he graciously and gracefully reacted to all sorts of difficult situations. Imam Hasan lived in a time where there was great opposition to the Ahlul Bayt, and in particular to the descendants of Imam Ali. This was during the time of the Umayyads, right? Bani Umayyah had instituted this great or large-scale animosity towards Imam Ali and his descendants. And so Imam Hasan was functioning and operating in that kind of environment. And there were those who would come, the report tells us of a primary example. A man comes from the Syrian province. It's a very famous report, famous story. He comes to Medina and he calls and he looks for an Imam al-Hasan. Once he identifies him, he begins to curse him and curse his father. Right? He uses all sorts of foul language. Now, you can imagine yourself in this situation. Someone who you are meeting for the very first time. They don't know you, you don't know them. And your very first interaction with this person is that they begin to curse you. They begin to defame you. What happens to us? Naturally, all of us would get upset. We would all get angry. And we may want to respond in a similar fashion. You curse me, I curse you. Right? We might even get violent. We might even attack the person. And Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam here displays for us, he embodies clemency. He responds very gracefully and graciously to this man. He tells him, listen, it looks like you're a traveler. You're not from here. You're not from Medina. Looks like you're traveling. You're a stranger. If you need a place to stay, I'll give you a place to stay. If you need someone to give you food, if you're thirsty, if you're hungry, I'll take care of you. If you need directions, I'll give you directions. This is what it means to deal with people with clemency, by pardoning them, by forgiving them. So number 2 is to live by the golden rule and to add the element of what? Of clemency and tolerance and leniency. Number 3, Imam Hasan teaches us to live with others courageously. What does it mean to be courageous? What does it mean to have courage? Oftentimes, the general idea is that a person who is courageous is someone who's tough, who's firm, right? Who's bold, who's assertive. This is our idea of what it means to be courageous. And Imam al-Hasan, he teaches us the meaning of courage. He says, he was asked, what is الشجاعة or courage? And he responded, he said, مواقفة الأقران والصبر عند الطعان. He says it is to stand up to your opponent and to have patience in the face of criticism. This is the meaning of courage. To stand up to your opponent and to have patience, to exhibit patience in the face of criticism. Now, we might ask, how do we distinguish? How do I know when I have to stand up to my opponent and when I have to be patient in the face of criticism? How do I distinguish between these two, right? The standard for distinguishing between these two is when it comes to the truth. If someone, right, opposes me, stands before me, and is spewing lies and deceit, right? They are attacking me or accusing me with something that is false. Then what do I have to do? In this moment, to be courageous is to stand up. Is to stand up, not to accept humiliation. You stand up because this is false. It's not true. However, if someone comes and criticizes me with something that is true, I have a problem, I have an issue, I've made a mistake, I have an area in my life that I need to work on, and someone comes and is critical of me, right? Then in that case, I don't stand up to this person, I don't get defensive, right? I don't consider them my opponent. In this case, I exhibit patience with criticism. Because if what they are saying is true, then this means I need to fix myself. I need to improve myself. And here I exhibit, being courageous here is not to stand up against them and get defensive. Being courageous here is to accept that criticism. To accept that I have something that I need to improve in. Right? So this is number 3, to be courageous. Number 4, Imam Al-Hasan says, on the other hand, to avoid cowardice, al-jubn. He was asked, what is al-jubn or cowardice? And he defined it as the following. He said, al-jur'atu ala as-sadiq wal-nukulu anil adu. It is to be assertive. Cowardice is to be assertive with one's friend and to run away or flee from one's enemy. It's to be assertive. It's not courageous for me to be bold and tough and assertive with my friend and my family member. I mentioned earlier, our idea of courage is that you're always tough, you're always firm, you're always bold. But it always has a place and a time and a context. With my friends, with my family members, being assertive and bold is not courageous. Being lenient, right, with them is courageous. If I display my strength and my firmness with family and friends, this, according to Imam Al-Hasan, is a mark of cowardice. Right? That I should reserve my boldness and my assertiveness for the wrongdoer, not my friend and my family member. For my friend and family member, I need to be lenient. I need to be kind and compassionate. And this is exactly how the Holy Quran describes the Prophet and his companions and his followers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, He says, Muhammadun Rasulullah walladhina ma'ahu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Muhammadun Rasulullah walladhina ma'ahu ashidda'u ala al-kuffari ruhama'u baynahum. Muhammad is the messenger of God, and those who follow him, who are part of his community, are what? They are kind and compassionate amongst themselves with one another, and they are firm and tough in the face of the wrongdoers. So cowardice, Imam Hasan teaches us, is when I display that firmness and toughness with my friends and my family members, those who are deserving of kindness and compassion, my brothers and sisters, not just my immediate family members, my brothers and sisters in faith, in community, right? And then finally, number 5, is to honor ourselves and to honor others with generosity. To avoid greediness and miserliness. Imam Hasan alayhi salam was asked by his father, Amirul Mu'mineen. One day, Imam Ali, he asks Imam Hasan, he tells him, define for me what greed, al-bukhl or al-shuh is. What is greed? And Imam al-Hasan, he responded to his father, Amirul Mu'mineen, he says, أن ترى ما في يديك شرفا أن ترى ما في يديك شرفا وَمَا أَنْفَقْتَ تَلَفًا. Greediness or miserliness is for you to consider that which you have saved, what is in your possession, as a source of honor, and that which you have given as a waste. Conventional wisdom tells me what? That if I have wealth, for instance, and I spend this wealth, I give this wealth away, especially if I give it to others. If I spend it on myself, I'm happy, right? It's investment in myself. But if I give it to others, this is a waste. I am giving away my money, right? And what I have saved with me is a source of honor and strength and pride. Imam Al-Hasan, he says, greediness and miserliness is when I assume that what I have with me, in my hand, in my possession, what I've saved is a source of honor, and what I have given away is a source of what? Is a waste. Real saving, real investment is when I am generous towards others. Why? Because when I give I am not giving to that individual. If I give with the right intention for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who am I giving to? Who am I giving to? The hadith says that when we give to the one in need, when I am placing the money in the hands of the one who is in need, it is as though I am placing the money in the hand of God. Is giving to God a waste? It's not a waste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is why Allah always reminds us in the Quran, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Who among you is going to give God a beautiful loan? Look at how the Quran speaks to us. It's as though I am the true master and possessor of my wealth. It's not as though God is the master. God is the one who gives and withholds. God is the sustainer. Wealth, my wealth is not mine. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has given to me to borrow, to use for a few years. Right? But the Quran says, who among you is ready to give Allah a beautiful loan, and in return it's a loan. The Quran says this is a loan. In return, the loan, the idea of a loan is what? That it's paid back. It's not a grant, it's paid back. And in return, Allah will give manyfold. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives manyfold. This is why we are always encouraged to be generous. To develop that generosity of spirit. To look to our communities, our societies, see how we can invest, how we can uplift, how we can empower, how we can help others. This is how we are encouraged to interact with others around us. And in these principles, whether it comes to God, my relationship informing with God, informing my relationship with others, whether it comes to living by the golden rule and having clemency and compassion, whether it comes to living courageously and avoiding cowardice, living generously, Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salam, he embodies all of these noble virtues in his life and legacy. And he does so especially at a difficult time. I mentioned the challenges that Imam Hasan faced externally and internally. He faced an external opponent in Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan, right? To the extent to which they used all of their means, everything to put him down and to put his family down. But he also faced internal challenges. When, for the sake of maintaining the peace of the community, maintaining the honor of the community, when he went into and agreed to that treaty with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, some of those who were among his companions and followers, they came to him and they were very critical of him. Sometimes they would come in and they would greet him with very, very sad kind of greetings. Assalamu alayka ya mudhill al-mu'mineen, they would tell him. Peace be upon you, O humiliator of the believers. This is how they would speak to him. Right? They saw this as a source of humiliation, and they were very critical of Imam al-Hasan. And so in this environment of external challenge and internal challenge, Imam Hasan alayhi salam teaches us, he embodies for us, how is it that you deal with people around you? How do you deal with the friend? How do you deal with the foe? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ability to learn from our Imams and to embody these noble values in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with others. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bil sabr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونسبحه على آلائه ونعمائه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وصل اللهم وسلم على أوصيائه وأهل بيته وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل ولزوم أمره. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. In one of the very important pieces of advice and counsel that Imam Ali alayhi salam gives to his two sons, Al-Imam Al-Hasan and Al-Imam Al-Hussein, he says to them three important things. He says, قُولَا بِالْحَقِّ وَاعْمَلَا لِلْأَجْرِ وَكُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. He tells his two sons, he counsels them, and he's teaching all of us by extension. Three important things. Number one, he says, قُولَا بِالْحَقِّ, speak the truth. Always. Without reservation, without shame, speak the truth. Number one. Number two, وَاعْمَلَا لِلْأَجْرِ, when you work, do so for the sake of God, for the sake of the pleasure and the satisfaction and the rewards that come from God. Even if you are not rewarded by others, your reward, if done sincerely, is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاعْمَلَا لِلْأَجْرِ. And then finally he says, وَكُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا, and be an adversary to the oppressor and the support for the oppressed. This is the advice that he gives his two sons, Al-Imam Al-Hasan and Al-Imam Al-Hussein. And in their lives and legacies, we find that both of these men, both of these Imams, each in their own way, they stood against the oppressors and oppression of their time, and they stood and supported the oppressed of their time. The stand of Al-Imam Al-Hasan Al-Mujtaba was no less valuable and honorable than the stand of Al-Husayn Al-Shahid. Each understood their context. Each understood their responsibility. And so we have to understand here, the lesson for us is that these two infallible Imams, they teach us the significance of understanding, pursuing justice, standing against the oppressor and with the oppressed, each in their own context. To understand that doing so, there are multiple modalities, multiple ways of standing against the oppressor and standing with and supporting the oppressed. But the lesson is that we always have to stand against oppression. All the time. We always stand with the oppressed, in all times and in all places. This is a responsibility. It's an obligation upon each and every one of us. In the face of oppression and injustice, we cannot stay silent. We cannot ignore it. We cannot presume that it's not important. When we have the opportunity to stand up for the oppressed, we have to do so. This is a responsibility upon each and every one of us. And we do so in different ways, in different capacities, depending on our time, our context, our resources. But that we must do so. We see in the world this continued plight, the continued oppression and injustice all over the world. All over the world. The horrible oppression that is continually being inflicted upon our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza, in the West Bank. What is happening with our brothers and sisters in Lebanon? What is happening with our brothers and sisters in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in other parts of the world? This continued injustice and oppression. It continues. And so that responsibility to stand up against injustice and oppression remains. And to stand with the oppressed. To stand with the oppressed. Unfortunately, what we have now in our context here in the United States, especially when it comes to the developments in the political arena, when it comes to the upcoming presidential elections. There's been many developments over the past month, right? Many have expressed various responses to these developments. Some people have been very excited. Yes, we have a new face. We have a new person. We have a new team who can stand up, who can provide, who can end up standing in the face of the continued injustice and oppression. And others, what do they see? And the challenge here is those who are standing up right now and voicing their concerns. They are voicing their concerns just yesterday. People whose families are being decimated. They're being killed. They are being tortured. Out in the public, out in the open. It's not hidden. It's out there for everyone to see. Those whose families and their brothers and sisters are facing such injustice and oppression, they speak out and they are told to be quiet. And they are threatened. With what? We are threatened with the big bad wolf. Right? If you speak out, right? The alternative is what? There's a big bad wolf out there. But I don't know what's more difficult. The big, bad wolf with orange hair, or the wolf in sheep's clothing. We don't know which is worse. But we have to remember, brothers and sisters, we have to remember that we have a responsibility to stand up against injustice. We can't remain silent. We can't be complicit, right? So in every capacity that we have, whether it's by word, whether it's by actions, whether it is in our prayers, and this is very important, in our hearts and prayers, that we stand with the oppressed, that we stand up against oppression and injustice. We do not become complacent, brothers and sisters. This is a responsibility upon each and every one of us. And this responsibility continues with us until there is an end to oppression and injustice. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst the agents of positive change. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to instill courage and strength in our hearts, in our minds, to always stand up for the truth, to always stand up for justice, to always stand firmly and resolutely against injustice, against oppression, wherever we see it, whenever we see it, in what capacity we experience it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring relief and comfort to those who are living under oppression and injustice. In Gaza, in the West Bank, in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, all around the world, anyone who is facing oppression and injustice, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring them relief and comfort. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring a full and speedy recovery to those who are sick, those who are ill, here in our community and elsewhere. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant all who are ill and sick a full and speedy recovery. We ask Allah to honor us with loyalty and devotion to Muhammad wa al-Muhammad in this life, and their ziyarah, to grant us the honor of their ziyarah in this life and their shafa'ah and intercession in the hereafter. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our 12th Imam al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa astaghfirullaha li wa lakum.